Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. All right. And welcome, everyone, to another episode of It's a Controls Problem. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. As always, with me is the great producer extraordinaire, Matthew Vanberg. Matthew, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing great. How are you, Charles?
Oh, I am just peachy keen. And we have today a dear friend of ours. Love this guy. He's back for a return trip. He wants more abuse from us. Mr. Jacob Jackson. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Charles, and I wouldn't call it abuse, just friendly ribbing.
That is more than fair. But no, absolutely, we're glad to have you here. So you've been in this new role at Aptitude, I believe was the name, for quite some time now. So how has that transition actually treated you, and what's a major insight that you've unlocked that now that you're settled in?
It's going really well. It's nice to be at the driver's seat, with Aptitude being owned by the general contractor and thus in them involving us on projects early on. It really gives you a bit more control and a bit more leeway on how you approach a project. So you don't get VE'd out before you were ever invited to the table. That's one thing. And it also has kind of helped them see the value of why they want the controls contractor so high up in the organization and how they affect things. We're dealing with a problem right now. I think everybody is, with this whole inability to get Dell servers. And, that messes up controls contractors when you can't put a server in on a project. But, the past 6 months have been crazy. We quoted a job and we had hard quotes from Dell from December, and then we re-quoted it in May because it took so long, and it was up 43%. Then we re-quoted it again at the beginning of June, and it was up 200% over the December number. And now we just re-quoted over the weekend, and it's 620 some odd percent over what it was in December. It's mind-boggling right now, the kind of things that are going on. But, if we weren't part of the GC, there would be no visibility to this. There would be no understanding of this problem. But because we are, it gets escalated immediately, and they start to understand it, and they can inform clients about what's going on in industry in general and how that's going to impact projects. And, as a GC, we have other jobs that we're not handling as Aptitude, and we've seen how other controls contractors, who shall remain nameless, have just decided to make changes in what they're going to deliver because they can't get certain materials. So they decide they're going to deliver a cloud solution, and that was not what was in the contract to be done. But that's what they're going to do because that's what they can get right now.
Wow, that doesn't... see, that's always the facepalm moment that I have. It's like, I understand, but if it's in the end, if it's not exactly what was agreed upon, it's going to just cause. I think it's just going to cause a headache. In the long run, it just. I mean, like I said, I get Dell. You said 600. How much?
I think it's 620% is what the current increase was.
Wow. That is super rough. I mean, imagine just $1 and then 600% is $6, right?
Right.
So if you think of it just that small, now multiply that, now take a $1,200, server, and it's now $7,200, right? That's just wow. That's amazing. I'm glad I'm not a part of that anymore. Some of that stuff I don't miss. Speaking of, you mentioned driver's seat. Obviously, when you get to new areas in the industry, the perspectives shift. And so, what is something that you used to take for granted in the building automation that you look at completely different today?
Uh, we're having more conversations with the finance teams on projects. Because we're part of the GC, we get involved in those early on. And it's interesting to see that perspective. Um, it's less about the number to the finance team, and it's more about the risk they're taking on. So the conversations are less about dollars and more about what's the stability of the platform? What is our availability to get technicians to help us out? What's the long term outlook for this? What's our upgrade path? And that doesn't sound like finance would be asking that, but they are. They're like, they want to know the risk of getting involved with something. What's it going to do to their long term finances, not just today. And I was not expecting that.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, it's always something interesting when when you go from one area to another, like working for an OEM directly. You get to see some of the frustrations that that people have in general. I'm not talking about anything specific, but when I go to the building subreddit or the building automation subreddit or HVAC talk or wherever, and you hear people say, oh, well, this should just be this and this should just be that and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, it's easy for you to say from your ivory tower, but what you're asking for isn't just a simple thing. Like some people will think like, oh, that could just be a simple change. No, I don't think you understand what it actually takes to design something, and then like what effort it requires for it to be, to be layered into, the current integration platform,
Yeah. And I think that kind of fits in with this is that the customers have, there is a cost concern. Don't get me wrong. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
you can throw out any number, but the concern about the cost is, time, schedule, what is it long term, those types of questions. We've got one customer that we're helping with workforce development because they can't find techs in that area. So it's not something I thought a GC would do, but it benefits us and the customer's interested. So we're helping with workforce development so that they can have technicians to be able to take care of this system when it's done. And honestly, even to just get it installed right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's that's really the thing. I just people I feel bad for everyone. But it's just there are just things in the background that like things that you and I know that it's hard to relay to anyone else because they're that it's for them it's not their problem, right?
Right.
So that's really the big thing. Alongside the day job that you have, as we know, you are an author. And so you've been quietly building, a publishing business. So, what sparked that itch not just to write, but to build the actual engine that publishes it?
Frustration. I went and looked for a publisher, and I went the traditional route to begin with, and talked to the standards organizations because I'd been working on a chapter for the International Society of Automation. They have what they call the Autobach, the Automation Body of Knowledge. And I got asked to update the chapter, went really well, thought it was something interesting. So I thought, you know what? I'm already a chapter in. Why don't I just go ahead and do the whole book? And, I had my notes and pulled them all together. But when I got done with it, I called up gal who ran the publishing end of the ISA, and she said, "Oh, we're in a transition right now, and we're not taking any manuscripts. But even if we were," and she talked through the process, and it would take 2 years to get the book from what I had to get it out. And I was like, technology changes a lot faster than that. I think the book's good. I think it has value, but I don't know if in 2 years it's going to have the same value. So I went looking for somebody else, and I talked with Ashray, and Ashray didn't want me because I don't have any initials behind my name. So that went nowhere. So I went and talked with Wiley, the big publishing house, and I read their contract. And Wiley has some interesting things in their contract that just kind of turned me off from wanting to publish with them. And it would still take a considerable amount of time, not 2 years, but it would take a bit of time. And then I went and looked at the self-publishing route and realized that a lot of those are just vanity. You pay them $30,000 and they'll publish your book, and they will make sure that a certain number of copies get sold so it gets on a bestseller list. But you don't make any money. You don't get any name recognition. It is just to say you've done this thing. And then hopefully you will get some kind of speaking engagements or something out of it. And I have an ego. I think all of us do have an ego, but I don't think mine is that big that I need to go spend $30,000 for people to know that I know building automation. So I was like, no, my wallet and my ego will not support this.
Sure.
So I decided to figure out another way. And I thought, okay, let's do the Amazon thing. And Amazon has exactly the opposite rules. They want you to basically give everything away. So after I'd gone through all the options, I decided the only way this was going to happen was to go ahead and do it myself. And I have a little bit of a background in this. A long time ago, I worked in a religious order, and I helped print Bibles and Bible magazines. So I knew a little bit, and I knew some people to call. So I made those phone calls, and I found out there's a couple things I needed to do, like getting a copyright on the book. In the US, yes, you get a copyright as soon as you write the manuscript. It's inherent in the process. But actually filing for a copyright with the Copyright Office actually gives you some protections, and then continued through the process about how you get listed in the exchanges to be able to sell the books at Barnes and Noble and et cetera. Learned how to do that, and then learned how to get the book published, and then collect the taxes, sales taxes, et cetera. And by the time I was done, I realized, oh, this is a full and legitimate business. And I thought, okay, I'll publish some more books later. And I have a couple more in the works that I really need to focus in on and get done. But I sat down and I talked with this guy, you know him well, Mark Peacock, and was telling Mark about this whole process. And Mark's like, I have something I've written that I might like to talk to you about getting it published. And it took a minute, but a year after I did my book, we did Mark's book. I regret to say that Mark's book is selling better than mine, but more people know him and like him. Mine's about true engineering, his is about marketing, so go figure.
Yep.
But that's doing really well, and I've seen 3 other manuscripts, 2 of which I am trying to work out contracts to be able to publish. One is on absolutely great stuff with data centers and how to do data centers and how to do the controls. And the guy who writes it is amazing. So if you'll sign the contract, there'll be a great book coming out soon. But another one was about one of our fellow industry alums and his journey to get into building automation. And it's a good book, and I really hope he'll find somebody to publish it, but it's not what I was looking for. I'm trying to stay on the business and the technical side, not on the not on the personal development. That's not a fit for what I was doing. But the books, I mean, I'm privileged to have gotten to read it, and I hope he finds a publisher for it soon. Um, and then there's a couple other people that have mentioned that they're working on a book, and I've reached out to them to see if I can coax them into letting me be their publisher. And so far, nothing, but we'll see what happens. There's always tomorrow.
Well, if I ever decide to write a book, I'll let you know. Um,
Oh,
Admittedly, like I don't even know what I would write about. Really, like there's I mean, I've never really thought about it, but like I realized there's a lot that I could just like I could have like an encyclopedia of just different things that people could could read. But it's a lot of work. I mean, kudos to you and Mark, for your books. I have a copy of each. I've read them multiple times. I really like them. So, out of that stuff that you were just mentioning, what was the single biggest lesson that you learned that you wish that you had known from day one?
ooh, about starting the publishing company or about
Yeah.
writing the book?
No, how about starting the publishing company? Let's start with that one.
I wish I'd done it sooner.
Okay.
There are lots of stories in this industry that need to get told. Um, I've talked with a couple people about doing something about the history of this industry, which I think would be a very cool book. But I would want to tailor it if I was the publisher to the lessons learned. And I think that the reason I would want to have wanted to start this company sooner and do the publishing sooner is there's a lot of stories that have gotten missed. We're a small industry. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have we have some very outsized shoes of our influence, but it's a small group of us. And the knowledge that is lost all the time because we don't write things down, we don't tell the stories of how we succeeded here, or this was a success, or oh, don't ever do this. um, Both technically and professionally, um, it's a challenge, and I would like to capture those stories and get them out to people. And I think that we probably have needed to do that for a while, and we haven't had a means to do that. The professional societies aren't interested in that. They really want straight, peer reviewed technical articles. They don't want a war story of sitting on the bucket in the mechanical room and, assuming that you're going to tune all four air handlers, one night, and you're going to copy and paste the parameters from air handler one and why that doesn't work on two, three, and four, and how much sleep you lost, and that story doesn't get across. And
Right.
and how did you overcome that? What did you do to fix that? That's a story, yes, but it's also a lesson that
Mm-hmm.
needs to be transmitted across the industry. And then same on the business side. How do you effectively communicate with the mechanical contractor, with the electrical contractor, with the IT department? What has worked for you, what hasn't? Those stories also need to be captured. There's all sorts of stuff that if I'd started sooner, I think that, one, I'd have the reputation that people would be willing to share those stories and let me publish them. And two, I think it would just be so valuable to the industry as a whole that we would have them and be able to do something with them.
Yeah, I think that some of those life lessons are really good. Like, for example, why can't you just take one and put in the others? Well, because each area is dynamic, right? Like just because you have the same equipment, you doesn't mean you're going to have the same results. Like everything literally changes. It's fluid,
Yeah.
and people don't necessarily understand that. I just finished a 6 video series on how to wire how to wire edge devices. And, it's quite interesting because I realize kind of going through, there are a lot of things that the younger generation doesn't know about from, from like an electrical perspective, or even I saw on even I saw on Facebook the other day where someone's like, yeah, I've got a 4 to 20 milliamp, I've got a loop power device, but I don't know where to put the 500 ohm resistor. And everyone's like, oh, you got to put it here, you got to put it there, you got to put it here. And I asked the question, are we sure that it's 500 ohm resistor? Do you have a 1 to 5 or do you have a 2 to 10? Well, I got a 1 to 5. Well, you need a 249 ohm resistor or a 250 ohm resistor, And they're like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, Ohm's law. It's a formula. And, if you had the Uglies electrical reference guide, handy, that would, I wish people just would have that, right? It's a $6 app that you can put on the phone that just updates all the time. A lot of that stuff just to kind of have hey, here's a handy dandy guide to being a technician, right? Here are the things that you need to, here are the gotchas that you're going to find out, find in the job, on a job site every day, right? You're right. People don't write that stuff down, and they should, because it's one of those things where, you're right. It is being forgotten about. And eventually some things are just going to be lost arts.
Yeah.
So, speaking of your book, when you were last on It's a Controls Problem, we barely started scratching the surface of it. So let's kind of get into the weeds a little bit on it. We'll talk about more security, where most mechanical and controls contractors are still dropping the ball, when it comes to safeguarding OT. So, where are they dropping that ball specifically? Because they're dropping it hardcore, but where do you think specifically they're dropping it?
I think it starts right at the very beginning. You have to design for security to begin with. There's been a lot of pushback right now because of the cost of things on doing converged networks. So let's use the corporate network to get things up and running. But okay, that's great. How are you segmenting that? How are you protecting the OT systems? How are you protecting the payment systems? Are you carrying the right cyber insurance to be able to do the things you're even talking about? That's another lesson learned working for the GC, is that the insurance requirements are changing, and we're qualifying contractors, and we're talking about cybersecurity for OT, and the very first question before we'll even give you the contract is, do you have cyber insurance?
Yep.
So if you don't have that, that's like we might not even let you on the job at this point. So it's that process of thinking it through and thinking about even those fundamental things that have to happen. When we get down to, programming it, yes, there's cyber issues there, but honestly, most of us have already kind of come up with ways of addressing those things. We program in alarms, we program in safeguards, we program in interlocks, whatever it is, because we're thinking about those things. We don't want to see the damage, but it's the things upstream that we don't think about. It's, okay, what happens if somebody does get on the OT network? Can they get over to the payment system? Am I going to be responsible if they steal all of the credit card data and it came through my building automation system? Do I have the insurance to be able to survive that and indemnify me? Or am I about to go bankrupt because I was an idiot and didn't even think about these things?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. OT and IT are colliding faster than ever now. And that's where the boundaries definitely get messy. So, how do we get traditional building teams to respect the cybersecurity protocols without making them feel like it's just blocking their everyday workflow? Because I know a lot of them feel that way.
Yeah, that's not an easy question to answer, because we've been struggling with that. How do we get them? We're looking at bringing more IT people on. All of a sudden, they're available thanks to, all this AI stuff that's out there. Yeah. So they're looking for jobs, and we're looking to bring some of those onto our team so that we can address those issues. Um, but it's a challenge for most of us as to how we do that, how we get that mindset in. I know I did not start in. I started in IT thinking that what I was doing was IT. I was really doing control systems, but didn't know it. I think that's how most of us get started. I read a post today about some kid who's at Stacks and Jewels, and he's like, I've been programming for years, and today's the first day I ever stripped wires. That's the kind of people that you need to have in to have those conversations because they have that background. They understand, the connectivity issues, the security that has to go in, and even just the troubleshooting on the comms to make sure they work. Getting those guys over, I think, would help a lot of that. They would help understand the problem and address it.
Yeah, I just saw that about an hour or two before you and I were talking. So yeah, I saw that as well, and I agree. For someone to have that background now coming in to kind of do it, yeah, we need more people, and really, that's why I really like Stacks and Jewels. They're providing opportunities to these kind of people who didn't really have it before, and now that are invigorating or they are injecting passion into them about an ever growing. Even though it's small, our industry is ever growing, and it's always continuously changing its perspectives.
Yeah, and I think there are more than just Stacks and Jewels doing it. I think I saw something from Smart Buildings Academy earlier
Mm-hmm.
today that similar mindset. I think it was a little more marketing focused in how it was written instead of first person, but they're getting to the same point of we're trying to get these IT skills in,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was a good perspective. Um, I like I said, we've been working with workforce development, so that team is not dealing with that. We're still dealing with our internal teams on just like you were saying, what's the right way to wire something up? Where does the resistor go? How did you calculate it? Do you know if you need that size resistor?
Mm-hmm.
What size wire do you need for this? We're doing a lot of fiber stuff right now. So, how do you calculate your bins and
Yep.
make sure that your fiber's not going to be messed up? So those questions have their place. So it's getting the right person with the right skill set in there to ask those questions, and it's not everybody needs to be doing that.
Yep. No, you're right. Here's another question I have. Like, all right, so let's say we have a facility manager, and maybe they're listening to this show, and maybe they suspect that their legacy building and automation network is vulnerable. So, if you were going through it, what would be the first diagnostic step? That you would instruct them that they need to take like tomorrow.
I think the very first step I would check is, do you have remote access to your system? Is there, one of those little VPN tools like TeamViewer or something on the computer? Do you know it's there? Do you know that somebody's coming in and doing that? And then I would look at usernames and passwords. Who has access to your system? You should have the admin rights, and that admin account should be set off to the side. You don't use it every day, but use that to look and see what usernames and passwords are on the system. Who's supposed to be there? I think that'd be the first two things I looked at is who has access to my system. And then the very next question would be, why do they have access to my system?
Yeah, I think a question I would ask is it on a public IP? I saw that there was a job in Charleston where we got the core job. So this was core antenna. This is core and shell. And we got the core, and then another contractor who the largest retrofit they had, that was their preferred contractor, and kind of basically told the customer, hey, this is who you're going to use if you want to keep us here. So they end up putting in a lot of the core. I mean, a lot of the tenant fit outs that they had, and we got a few. We had gotten a few back. However, what actually turned them loose was they put in a supervisor that used just RDP, and they just put the port forward 3389. I think it's 3389 if I remember correctly. Just kind of put that there, and someone went in there. They were sniffing on it. The supervisor was on a public IP, and they RDP'd in and did some damage to the system. And so then, that contractor got kicked off, and, we ended up taking over the rest of it and kind of, kind of hardening everything. Like, all right, well, this is not going on a public IP anymore. We're gonna get you a VPN. We're gonna put the building automation on a VLAN. We're getting that. They're done. That's not happening anymore. And then, anyone who needs access, they're gonna have only, a certain amount of time to do it. Then after that gets cut off, and they need to request it again. Like, that's, it's annoying, but you know what? That's what you get for people when they FAFO, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I thought we had gotten past this. I mean, Shodan HQ has been out there for well over a decade,
at least 20 years.
Yeah. And you can go right on Shodan and say, hey, find me all the, Niagara servers that are openly accessible on the internet. Why would you do something that stupid? That's like fundamentally stupid. That's like you didn't even read the instruction manual and stupid.
Yep.
I have not seen one that bad in a while. So, but it does go back to what I was saying about segmenting your network. I mean, if you're not even having that discussion,
yeah.
But yeah, I guess if you're a facility manager and you're hearing this for the first time, go on Shodan HQ and just make sure you're not listed somewhere.
Yeah, so in my when I do my cybersecurity lecture, and Matthew was a part of it. I don't know if he was in that class, but I always show everyone Shodan.io. And in one case, it was an art museum that was using AX. And I was like, what if I logged in using the IP address and the default credentials of that Jace? And surely enough, I was able to get in. So I stopped the training and I was like, hey, I need to find out who this is. You need to change that now. That I could have gone in and deleted the entire station and whatever else and did damage to, millions of dollars of artwork and whatnot. So, I kind of stuff. And it's still, I found one today that was like 3-4. Using that kind of, having that just on a, just out there is just wild. I don't get it. And I think you have a lot of mom and pop shops that are just trying to, they're two men in a truck and they're just slamming in jobs, doing what they know and, not really thinking, oh, well, no one's really going to take a look, no one's really going to do this or that. And so I think a lot of people, I think, still take things for granted and they really shouldn't. There are people out there and they are doing nefarious things. And so, cybersecurity really needs to be up there. Tomorrow I'm going to, I have a whole demo on, I have a station now where I actually just literally took out and I think I made 25 categories. And I think I have 40 different roles now. And so we're going to log into a few of them tomorrow and they're going to see how detailed, I actually give people things to where I don't want them to break the system at all.
Yeah. Larger and larger enterprise clients. We're seeing more and more of that where the roles are broken down where you can only see the points that are related to this building and to the lighting control system. You can't see anything else, but it's all here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't change anything except the schedule. That's all you can change. You can't
Yep.
override any point. You can't do anything, just the schedule. That's all you get to do.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases that's just the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, like, yeah, well, someone bought it, sure, but I mean, like, you should still have, yes, and there's a user that will give you access to everything, but do you need to use that user every day? No, not at all. So those are all really good points. Since the book has launched, the technological landscape hasn't exactly stood still, really. So if you were to kind of sit down and write an updated edition of your book, is there one chapter or concept that you would feel compelled to add that you didn't have in there before?
Microgrids.
Mm-hmm.
I have been reading on the NEC 2026 for the past few months. It's going to get rapid adoption. I think we're tracking that 2 states are adopting January 1st, and another 7 states are expected to follow behind. And some of them are going to jump from like the 2017 NEC to the 2026. And what's interesting is that your switchgear has got to be intelligent switchgear. You've got to have electrical control systems and power management systems. And I knew these things. I know they exist, but I was not expecting them to come and be required on buildings this fast. And I think that's going to be an area where I'm focused for the next year of how we're going to do microgrids and how we're going to do demand response and how we're going to adjust the loads in a building and how we're going to use these distributed energy resources and how we report that back up. And it's almost a whole nother book by itself, but at least I would have had a chapter in there to cover that stuff and kind of give some more high level about what needs to happen and what's going to go, because I think that's going to be the growth area for the next 5 years is that electrical. I mean, we see it with the cost of electricity right now. We see it with the news reports about, AI centers needing so much electricity. We're seeing it on projects that, electrical generation, solar, wind, some other alternative fuel source is almost a requirement on every project now. So being able to do that, and the electrical industry does not have controls guys like we do. So they're not going to do it themselves.
Yeah, with the rise of AI, microgrids and stuff like that are, data centers are just blowing up everywhere.
Yeah.
So it really is something that people are looking to, are looking to get into. I can't tell you how many jobs I've seen so far. Like, they're looking for people, to be in those data centers. I don't know if I would ever work in one of them, but, I see a lot of opportunity in it for sure. So if someone really wants a good challenge, then I think working in a data center would be really good.
I don't know if I'd call it a challenge. I mean, to me, it seems very monotonous. What you're in there to keep running is very, very standardized. I mean, you've got 400 racks, and you're going to deal with the power distribution and the cooling, and the cooling. They've got 4 of whatever it is, so that they can have N+1, and they, the guys who do building automation in those are really just dispatchers. Nothing's going to happen to the control system, more than likely. You're going to be dispatching to get mechanical out there to replace a valve or change a filter, or a compressor went out on your crack unit, or some mechanical issue, or electrical. Hey, we need to upgrade this side of the building so that we've got more, because we've got the new NVIDIA Spark 5 that consumes 16 times as much electricity as the last one did, whatever the case is. But I mean, you as the building automation guy are not going to be doing that. You're going to be looking at the data and saying, yep, okay, we're going up here. We need to do something here and we need to dispatch this guy. So
Well,
I'd
I
be
think
bored.
I think the challenge comes from dealing with a demanding customer, right? So, I think sometimes the higher ups trying to convey what really needs to be done versus, what they expect to be done, I think are two different things. I think that's really the challenge. You're right. The rest of what you're doing is monotonous, but I think that, having dealt with some higher demand clients, being in some of those meetings, I was just like, okay, why are we continuously moving a target? What are what are you actually trying to accomplish? And, just let us do our job. I think having meetings upon meetings on everything, like so many meetings I had to deal with, I was just like, why are we I could be doing work right now, but no, I'm here in a meeting doing that. So for me, I think that's the challenge of just, of dealing with dealing with their higher ups, not necessarily the controls work itself. So at least that's what I think. That's just from seeing that side. But yeah, doing the actual work is not terribly difficult.
Yeah.
So looking back at what you printed, is there anything, or do you have any perspectives that you expressed in the original book that maybe you've kind of shifted based upon project realities?
No, no, sadly, I have not. I am. I am a firm believer in pretty much everything I have put down. I am preaching it. I am evangelizing it. I am telling everybody that this is really the path forward about how we silo the systems, how we interconnect them, how we make them so that you can pull them apart when they need to be upgraded, about getting controls at the table so that we're that fourth trade. I wouldn't even update the Purdue model. I know that there are other models, but honestly, for what we do, where we are, I even think that's the right fit right now. So no, I really have not come into anything where I would go, oh no, this is the wrong process. I would change this. I am a firm believer in everything I have put down. I have not seen anything I want to change yet.
Okay, well, that's really good to know. I know that some people, they write something, and depending upon how long ago it was actually written before, it was published, I can see some things. But no, I'm glad that you wouldn't change anything. And after you're reading your book, I probably wouldn't either. I think that your perspectives were pretty spot on.
Trying to set me up there, right, Charles?
Well, no, I mean, I trust your judgment. You were the author, and so, I think you're one of the smartest people that I know. And I will always respect your opinions and your perspectives.
Well, thank you. And it is just an opinion. It is this, until you pay me, it's not fact.
I really, until you pay me. Okay. I like that one. Okay. I'm going to have to steal that one. Okay. So I tell you what, let's talk about boots on the ground today. So for you, what is the most stubborn and frustrating struggle that keeps repeating itself on building projects? And how do we fix that as an industry?
The most stubborn problem. I think right now, I'm going to say the electrical installation of a job. I think almost every building automation contractor I've met does exactly the same thing. They get a job and then they go hire an electrician to do their rough ends, their pathways. They don't have an in-house crew to do it. And if they do have an in-house crew, it's separate from the rest of the controls team. But there is this huge gap between the communication on the two teams
Preach.
what do we need? How does this need to be set up? Something as fundamental as don't put your power supplies inside the same enclosure as your controllers. And everybody's like, well, why is that a problem? Because when you do maintenance, the guy has to get in a full arc flash suit to go open it because that's what the safety code says. So just take those out, put them in a separate enclosure, and only bring over the 24 volts you need to run your controllers. And then put a sticker on the front of the cabinet that says that no voltage over 24 volts present in this cabinet. It's a simple thing, but they don't communicate between each other, between the electrical team and the actual controls guys. And so you keep having this problem. But then it goes further. It's like, well, we need conduit to the air handler, and they don't say where on the air handler. We need it after the mixing coil. Well, the other thing is that the electricians don't know what the cooling coil, the heating coil, the mixing box, they don't know what any of that means.
Mm-hmm.
Until they've been doing this for about 5 years. So how do you communicate that? How do you explain that to them? And if you're always hiring a different crew, you're never going to get to that 5-year point because it's, you've been using the same company for 5 years, but it was Joe last time, it's Bob this time, it's Chuck next time, and it's Fred the time after that. So that to me is the most frustrating thing is that there's a disconnect between the actual installation and the guys who are designing. And it should be very solvable, very easy to lay out, but nobody does it right. It's infuriating.
I had to replace a fuse that was just on the that was on the 24 volt side. It was just a 5 amp fuse. Literally, they just put it in line. It blew, so I went to go replace it, and it was only going to be like 15 seconds worth of time. And I opened up the panel and I saw the 120 there, and I was like, okay. I looked to my left, I looked to my right, and just as I'm getting ready to take the fuse out of the box, someone's like, "Hey, you need arc gear." I was like, I'm just replacing this right here. Yeah, well, that's not how we do things around here. I was like, so it literally took 4 hours to get everything and then come back for literally 15 seconds worth of work. And the guy sat there and watched it. He's like, "That's all you need to do?" I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Well, you just wasted 4 hours, didn't you?" I was like, "No, you wasted 4 hours." He goes, "No, you wasted 4 hours for not using proper procedures." I was like, "Okay, you win. I will, I'll give you that." But sometimes I'm just like, man, like, nothing's really going to happen here, but obviously everything's there for protection, right? Like, And
I think that's the issue. And that, like I said, I've been reading the 2026 NEC.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that people take for granted. I mean, it's just DC. So but that DC is 800 amps.
Yeah.
That will kill you dead, and your 3 closest companions as well. So taking the time to know what you're doing is very important. That version of the NEC gets rid of the term low voltage.
Yes.
Low voltage will be a thing of the past.
Correct. It is. Go ahead.
Limited energy.
That's correct.
That's what we're moving to is limited energy systems.
Yep.
And you're going to have an electrical license to touch any of these limited energy systems. There is no more low voltage escape clause that says, "Oh, I'm just doing low voltage. I don't need an electrical license." No, you're going to have an electrical license to touch the elevators, to touch the lighting controls, to touch the
Mhm.
HVAC controls, to touch the security system, to touch the AV. If it's not a consumer connector, you're going to have an electrical license. And people aren't following this. They're not keeping up with how code is changing. And it's changing for good reason. I mean, there are documented incidences of people getting killed and seriously injured by low voltage systems because they have far more available fault current that can kill you and hurt you than you realize.
Mhm.
I mean, um, yeah, we've got a 10 amp breaker on a circuit that feeds the VAVs. Yeah, it only takes 20 milliamps to kill you, number one. Number two, by code, it should have been a 4 amp breaker, and somebody couldn't get a 4 amp breaker, so they got the smallest they could get, which was 10. So it's installed wrong to begin with. And the code is catching up and saying, hey, inspectors, you need to look at this. And you need to make sure people are qualified to do this so that they don't do stupid stuff like that. If
Mhm.
it's 4 amps, it's 4 amps for a reason. It's not 10 amps. You can't double it and just say, well, I put protection on there. You didn't put protection on there. You put a breaker on there that's not doing what you need it to do. I'll get off the soapbox.
No, I mean you're right. Like I mean it's the amperage that'll kill you. But yeah, obviously, but yeah, but like it can really. I mean, there's so much it can really do, and yeah, some things you might feel a tingle. Like I remember my elbow grazed across 208. I was like, ooh, that was not fun.
Mm-mm.
I've had people, that got hit with like 480 and whatnot, and they're lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
So I get it completely. And I mean, it makes sense. Yeah. The limited energy, when I first read that, I was like, all right, I get it. I was like, it's going to take a while to say it, but yeah, I definitely get it there. So, speaking of which, like we hear the phrasing smart building all the time, but like, let's think bigger. So what does a truly intelligent society look like to you when the infrastructure, the energy, and buildings are properly aligned?
Um, I've been reading a little bit about what the guys over in Saudi are doing with the smart cities, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting. Even on a small scale, we're looking at that with certain hospital projects where we're doing a microgrid in the building, and looking at catastrophic event. We've got to maintain the surgery center. We've got to maintain the ICUs. How do you manage your energy in the building? Um, Systems being able to report, what is my occupancy, what is going on in here, and being able to tell that to a smart energy system that then says, okay, yeah, that's not a ICU room, but they've got this in there and it's got this particular issue. So that means I have to keep these things on in the room, whatever it is. I'm not a medical person. So, you know, whatever those gadgets are that
Mm-hmm.
deal with whatever that problem is, we're not there yet. We're not at the point where we can do that kind of thing. But if the systems could communicate that clearly, I think that would be extremely interesting. I'm not sold on the financial reasoning for that yet. Are we that desperate that we need a system to do that? Can people not figure that out? I don't know that. That one I'm still struggling with. But large scale, as you move it out, hey, we're having energy or water or whatever problem. How can we divert? How can we, reuse? How can we do whatever? I think that's a more interesting question. I don't know if you saw it, but New York City is doing this new energy program where
Mm-hmm.
they are using a battery for, because New York City still has a lot of window air conditioning units, and they charge the battery during the day because nobody's
Mm-hmm.
in the apartments, and then at night when the grid gets a big demand, they kick off and they're like, yeah, you're off the grid, use your battery to run your AC.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
now that starts to make some interesting sense. And if you could get your building to be intelligent enough to know, hey, I've got battery storage here, I can charge while nobody's in there, and then I can use it when there's a
Mm-hmm.
high demand. That kind of makes sense. Same way with water. Hey, could
Mm-hmm.
we do
Ice
some kind of
plants.
system? Yeah, ice plants, but I was thinking even in cities, you pump water up to the tower on the top of a high rise. Hey, could
Mm-hmm.
we do some kind of staggered system instead of having the whole city have to run the pumps at flat out, at this particular time of the day? What if we could say every address that ends in 1 does it from this time to this time? Every address that ends in 2 does it from this time to this time. And the system doesn't have to go flat out. We can save energy and money as a town by doing this and pumping it up to wherever it is. Things like that become interesting, but I think those are, somebody has to sit down and think out strategies, and then they have to have controls that can respond to those strategies. So, what can you make available on the control system? And then what kind of strategy can somebody else come up with? I think that's a team effort. I don't think that's one person doing this.
Yeah. So how close do you think we are from actually achieving like that level of societal integration?
Not close.
I had to ask.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a short answer for this one. But yeah, I think it is kind of interesting to think about that kind of cascading effect, if you will. That would require a lot of infrastructure to be put into place for sure.
Yeah, I think there are steps before that. I have my first meeting with the new ASHRAE 231P committee next week for common descriptor language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty excited about this standard. It's a way of writing sequences in a language that both humans and machines can understand and only has one interpretation. And that to me is very intriguing, because how many times have you sat down with a sequence for an air handler and you've read it and gone, well, does the engineer mean to do this, or do they want this,
Mm-hmm.
or do they want that? And you're like,
Yeah.
I could see all three of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's like part of like, so you know me, I used to hate G36 with a passion. I was like, we've been doing this stuff, way back now, and now you're calling it a guideline, and it kind of used to really irritate me, but I never really kind of took the time to appreciate what it was trying to do, and like, hey, we can standardize this whole thing, and sure, maybe there are different ways to achieve the exact same thing that's happening. But yeah, I think that, I think what you're hitting on is going to change, I think, the landscape. So now there's no interpretation. It's
Right.
just one way.
Right.
So we know that there's an incredible amount of fluctuation hitting the BAS space right now. And that's from shifting protocols to, like corporate consolidations. And that's really that's happening everywhere. But what is your best piece advice for a tech or an engineer who's feeling a bit, uncertain around their career path right now?
Don't worry. We still need you. You're Yeah, I would not get too hung up on whose shirt you're wearing to work. I
Mm-hmm.
would say that if you need to make a change to a different manufacturer or a different trade partner, or whatever it is, I wouldn't get too worried about that. You are needed and valued. So don't let some disruption affect your self-worth. That would be my first thing to tell you. The second thing is, buckle down on fundamentals. Know the underlying things that are going on. What is the control theory? What is the electrical theory? How does the mechanical system operate? If you know those things, you can transition to a different framework or system that you need to. And just, go find the shirt that you like the best and work in that shirt next time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I think that's right. Or yeah, even if you don't feel valued there, you can find someone that will value you. Because culture changes, perspectives change, and therefore values don't necessarily align anymore when they used to.
Right.
So,
right.
Yep. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. What is one core truth or standard that you think that is never going to change, regardless of how advanced we get?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. I almost want to go fundamental here, Charles, and just say, be honest. If you don't know something, just say I don't know. Be willing to learn. If you do know something has been done wrong, be honest and tell them that's not the way it should have been done. Here's where it's messed up. Here's where they made the mistake. So be honest, both about, your own failings and your own successes. Just be honest. I don't think that's going to change. I think that's always going to have value in this field.
That is actually a really deep perspective for the few words that you used. I don't think people really understand how important that is. As a part of a trainer, I ask people, tell me what you don't know. I've for companies I've worked for, someone gets hired. Okay, you got hired. I need to know what you don't know. Well, you see on my resume, pardon my French, I don't give a shit what your resume says. You interviewed and you got in. I need to know what the resume isn't going to tell me. Right? And if you can do that, you and I are going to get along swimmingly well. But if you don't, that's going to create an issue.
I don't hire for technical skills. I hire for competency and I hire for character. Can I get along with you? And do you know enough to be able to start the job?
Yep.
Because technical skills are going to change. So do you know, protocol blah, blah, really well? I don't care. I mean, if you know it well enough to call it by its right name, we're good. We can deal with that. If I do need an absolute expert on that, guess what? I'm going to go out and hire an absolute expert on that. But I'm probably not going to bring him as part of the team. I just needed him for that particular episode. So when I'm hiring, I'm looking for character. Can I get along with this person? Can I trust them that they're going to be able to work on my team for a while? Do I think they've got potential and can do more? Because nobody ever gets hired for the job they're going to do today. They get hired for the job they're going to do tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. That's what you're hiring for. You want somebody who can grow.
Yep, absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. I really think that was a great, great place to end. Jacob, it's always a pleasure having you here for sure. It's always good quality conversations that we have.
Charles, you and Matthew are great. I mean, I know most people don't hear Matthew on the podcast, but all the prep work he does, he's amazing. And you're one of my favorite people. You have a knack for telling the truth and telling people this is what needs to happen. And
yep.
I love you guys, both of you. You're great.
No, we love you too. And,
Right back at you, Jacob.
And you're right. Really, Matthew is. I mean, I'm just the mouthpiece. I'm the pretty. I'm just the pretty artwork. Matthew really does all the heavy lifting. You know, he does. You know, he's to me, he's the most important part of this team. It's not me. You know, it's you as the guest, and Matthew is the one that puts everything together. I'm just here as the intermediary. So, you know, I mean that. I tell Matthew all the time, like, he's the most important person here. So for sure.
Ah, shucks.
Well, Jacob, you have a great night, and we'll see you in another episode.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Have a great one. Oh, you're welcome. Pleasure's all mine.
Take care.
And that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and be honest. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. I'm just gonna ask him, like, was Jacob sick that day? Like, did he fall? Like, hurt his head? Like, I don't.
And cut.
All right.